This is the Hunt Quietly podcast. I'm Matt Rinella.
So, do you, John, feel like you sometimes come across as an arrogant dick, or have you been told that?
Oh, I've been told that. Well, like on Facebook, you always, I don't care what you do, you always get negative feedback. And a lot of guys, because I like to mention I've shot X amount of bucks and I hunt strictly public and free permission properties. I've never hunted in a lease and all that stuff. They think that's arrogant. I view when I'm talking about stuff, I'm very confident in what I'm talking about because I've experienced it and I've proven that it works for me. So while I'm tend to possibly be overly confident, it's taken a lot of times as being arrogant.
Okay.
Potentially too, that they might, even though they never admit it, they could perceive it subconsciously as threatening because they would not feel comfortable being able to achieve the same things in the same circumstances as you.
Oh, without question.
Yeah. I mean,
I bet our Instagram, our Hunt Quietly Instagram, gets more venom than almost any social media. Definitely any social media platform in the hunting space.
Why?
Oh, so yeah, we have a lot of I can tell you haven't looked into us much, but we have a lot of contrary views to the mainstream hunting sphere. As a matter of fact, my brother and I are estranged over my viewpoints. We have a lot of problems with people with hunting influencers and people that hunt for likes and fame and money as opposed to the traditional reasons. So we take a lot of heat because people that are on social media that are hunters, they're largely on there to see other people's content and show people their own,
Well, you and I are going to get along well.
So
I've been in this industry for 50 some years. I'm extremely negative towards the way hunting is perceived, especially on TV. And I'm very cognizant of how so many hunters now are hunting super ultra managed properties, where there's lots of mature bucks, no hunting competition, and they're killing nice bucks every year, and they think their skill sets through the roof. When in reality, 50% of the hunters in the country that are hunting public land could go on their properties and probably kill bigger deers if they're somewhat consistent on public. They could kick the ass of any TV guy. I don't care what TV guy. I don't.
Yeah.
All the high profile guys.
They are uncomparable.
Totally.
What you and I and Ben do is uncomparable to somebody that has a hunting property.
I like to put it. Can I put it in my perspective?
Yeah.
Several perspectives of what a lot of hunters purvey the TV guys as being icons and experts. Okay. I'm going to relate hunting, even though it shouldn't be related to a sport, because you're killing things. It's not a sport. It's an activity.
I call it a pastime. What do you think of that?
Pastime's okay, but pastime still sounds like it's something you're doing for fun, recreation, and killing. To me, I've never filmed a kill. I don't like seeing arrows go into animals. It's just fodder for anti-hunters and lawsuits and stuff like that. So I don't like seeing that, and I like to call it an activity. I don't like to relate it to anything that's recreational because you're killing something.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's an activity imbued with passion. So
Without
people could be passionate about basket weaving, whatever, but when it gets to a level that it's fundamental to your core, then it kind of crosses into passion.
yeah, and it's something that's not only a passion, it also supplies phenomenal food fodder, table fodder, and that's another thing. You look at these enclosures, and when we wrote our first book, Chris and I.
That's your brother.
Huh?
That's your brother, right?
Chris was my son.
Oh,
okay.
Chris was my eldest son that worked with Steve when Steve first started meeting.
Okay. So, but, okay. So I have one of your books, Hunting the Eberhart Way. That's you and your son, not you and your brother. Okay. I read that book 10 years ago. So.
Okay. Yeah. My son, Chris, and I co-authored 3 books. And then I just released a new book. It's a 3-volume series book because it was going to be 800 pages. It's a single book. So it's a 3-volume whitetail instructional hunting book. And I did that one pretty much on my own.
Okay.
Where I was going with that sports analogy is, when these TV guys want to think they're experts and they're icons, the hunting industry. In sports, okay, let's say Tom Brady, Phil Mickelson, Michael Jordan, Michael Phelps, all the guys that are true icons of a sport, they're icons for a very specific reason. They probably all played whatever sport they're professionals at. They probably played it in middle school, high school. If they were good enough in high school, they got scholarships to go to college. Now you're competing at a whole nother level with everybody else that you're competing against in college has competed with hundreds of people down the pyramid to get to college themselves to play sports. So then you have to be better than all of the guys in college to get drafted into the pros. So now once you're drafted into the pros, you're dealing with a whole nother level of athletes that have all competed with tens of thousands of people go down the pyramid to get into the pro ranks. So by the time you reach the icon status in a sport, you've outcompeted all of the professionals, all of the college kids you played against, all the high school kids you played against, all the middle school kids you played against. And you did it on the exact same golf course, swimming pool, baseball field, baseball diamond, football field, basketball courts. You competed on the same exact field. Whereas in hunting, properties are so different. The TV guys are hunting on farms. They're like zoos. I mean, they're raising deer like a cattle rancher would raise cattle, except they're raising deer to be big bucks until they're ready for the media market, the entertainment market, and then they shoot them. So these bucks are, while year and a half, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5 years old, they're passing by the 1 or 2, 3 people that hunt on these huge properties, and they're not having any negative consequences. So they continue to move in the daylight. They're not afraid of human odor. They're not afraid to come out in the thick cornfield 2 hours before dark. And they sit in the box line like you're turkey hunting and shoot these big bucks. And it takes literally zero skill.
Oh yeah. And then these guys and then these guys get huge platforms.
Yeah.
And they direct people's expenditures, like what gear they buy, because they're considered the experts. They have how-to courses, in which they teach everybody how to do it.
The how-to should just be.
And it's just such bullshit because it's just not an even playing field, even remotely.
It's all, they're like hunting in an enclosure. I mean, it's close to an enclosure hunting as you can possibly get.
There's a part of me that thinks it's worse. Like, if you're on a property with great habitat that nobody else can hunt,
right?
Aren't deer filtering in there then from the neighboring properties? Which, like, if it's enclosed, you have a fixed population of deer you're hunting, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But if it's not enclosed, all the neighboring properties have activity. You don't have a fixed population. You got an increasing population.
You do, but most of those big, huge, ultra managed properties that TV guys are at, they're surrounded by similar types of properties.
True.
They don't
Okay.
want their deer to go off their property that they've been raising and feeding for 5 years to go onto a neighboring property where they'll kill a 6-pointer and get shot. So, you look at like zones 4, 5, and 6 in Iowa or eastern Kansas or southern Illinois, there's literally counties damn near where everything is ultra managed. And so they are typically not on an island. Their property.
Right. Okay.
You can never measure a hunter's skill set if they're not hunting against competition. Just like you can't measure a sports icon's skill set unless he was competing against competition to reach that skill set.
Amen. Yeah.
He competed on the same field. Hunters don't do that.
So,
John,
go ahead.
do you think that has there been any penetration of that veil, you think, or is it the same that it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago? And I sort of would contend that we confuse being on television with expertise. And so, because when you see Tom Brady, he's on national television. When you see so-and-so expert on geopolitics on pick your news channel, there's an assumption, an imprimatur of that. And so they're sort of paralleling and bootstrapping to that. And so they're sort of starting from a place of where people wouldn't question it. But I just wonder now with more social media and things, maybe hunt quietly on the margin, there's any penetration of that veil.
I definitely think there's becoming a lot of penetration of that veil. When I wrote my first book in 2003, every book I've ever written, I beat up on TV guys. Every time I do a podcast, I beat up on TV.
He beat us to the punch.
Huh?
You beat us to the punch.
You were Hunt Quietly before Hunt Quietly came along.
Yeah, I just totally can't stand. I mean, there's a spattering of decent TV shows, a very small spattering, but I just can't stand the TV shows for the most part because they're so misleading. And you're right, they're actually feeding off, the TV icons that are the newscasters or whatever, the sportscasters, and they get the same acknowledgement from the novice hunters that follow them that don't know any better, and then they're hunting on mediocre property or public land, and they think these guys are super awesome because they go on these other mediocre properties, public land. They struggle killing a 6-point. So now they've really got these guys on a pedestal. They just don't realize the methods that those guys are using don't work where there's hunting competition. Period. It just doesn't work. I would dare if I took the 10 most high profile TV actors that kill big bucks on their ultra managed properties, and I put them on public land in Michigan, I would almost guarantee they couldn't kill a 2.5-year-old 14-inch whitetail. I would almost guarantee that because they have no knowledge of how to hunt deer in real life.
They'd probably get bored and go home.
Well, I know one guy that had a real highly profile TV show, and he moved to Michigan for a year, and he couldn't kill 100-inch deer.
Oh, so John, what do you do for a living?
Right now, I nap a lot.
Okay, you're retired.
Yeah, I retired. No, I just finished writing my last book, which is, again, 3 volumes. It's called Ultimate Guide to DIY Bucks. So that took me 18 months. I got well over 5,000 hours into it. Just finished that. It just came out on the market in October. I do whitetail workshops where they're 2-day workshops. First day's in the woods, second day's an all-day seminar at Jay's Sporting Goods. Matt, you know where that's at if you're from Michigan, correct?
I've heard of it. I don't know where it is.
Oh, okay. It's the Clare location. It's the largest.
Oh, there's multiple locations.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Clare location. So I do 2-day whitetail workshops where I charge people X amount of dollars to come, and I limit them to 15 people per weekend. So I do those. I've got a YouTube channel. I write for Deer Hunting, Bow Hunter, Saddle Hunter magazine. I write for regional magazines. So I'm staying busy. But I was a sales rep the last 32 years of my career, work career. I was a sales rep in the hunting, camping, fishing industry, and I've repped for most of the big lines in the country.
Okay.
Berkeley, Garcia, Mitchell, Trilene, Power Baits.
Oh, so you're an angler as well.
Yes, I held a world record on a steelhead for 6 years. I had a state record Michigan buck for 6 years. I'm sorry, steelhead wasn't 6 years. It was like 3 years I held that record. So I fish a lot.
How much did the steelhead weigh?
It was a line class steelhead. So
Oh,
What was the tippet?
4 pound.
4
It wasn't
pound?
a tip.
Yeah.
No, you have to have
Well,
the world record fish.
Yeah.
You have to send them 50 feet of your line, and it all has to be within that weight class.
Are you talking for IGFA? That's
Talking for Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame.
okay. So not IGFA is a
There's
separate.
two separate world record things. I don't know if IGFA has line class.
They well, yeah. For them, they just call it a tippet class. So, and for most of all that, it's well, in saltwater, it's kind of, I'm not expert on it, but it's 16 pound. So
okay,
yeah.
Mine was 4 pound, and keep in mind your line has to test out at 4.7 pounds or lighter to be a 4 pound world record. Now, if you buy 4 pound Trilene or 4 pound Excel or Maxima, 4 pounds is going to test out someplace between 7 and 8.5 pounds. So you have to use tournament line.
Yeah,
You have to use 4 pound tournament line, which I was using Andy line, and I was using the rod that I built, which was a G Loomis steelhead.
Okay.
You shot the state record whitetail deer?
With a muzzleloader I did in 1981. Dressed out 287 pounds, scored 167, and it was shot on public land. I think it was the only state record buck that had ever been taken on public land.
So is the record for muzzleloader?
It was the record. It was the record for 6 years. It was from 1981 and 1987. A guy from the Upper Peninsula broke it.
Oh,
hunting in the Upper Peninsula, or he's just?
No, I was hunting in southern Michigan, which I was in the Pinckney Recreation Area.
Yeah.
Well, I think what Ben was asking is the guy that beat you, that's from the Upper Peninsula. Was he hunting in the Upper Peninsula?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
Oh, really? That's pretty impressive that he found it.
No, not really. Back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Ben, you're not from Michigan, are you?
No, but I'm from the Midwest, so okay. I know the UP not as well as Lower Michigan, but treat me as if I don't know anything.
Okay. Well, back then we had a TV show, and it's still going on, called Michigan Out of Door. And on Big Buck Night, through the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, 9 out of 10 of the state's biggest bucks came from the Upper Peninsula. Very rarely would you get one from the Lower Peninsula. But back then we did not have wolves. Wolves had not been introduced. So the deer in the UP, there was quite a few deer. They were very hardy, like deer in Saskatchewan and Alberta. They were longer legged, bigger bodied.
Yeah.
And they introduced the wolves. That just crushed the Upper Peninsula. And also, back in those years, the Southern Peninsula didn't have a lot of deer. Down in southern Michigan, which was mostly ag, all your ag areas in the 60s and 70s had very, very, very few deer. The deer didn't become prevalent in big numbers of whitetails in like Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas until really the mid 80s to 90s. It was a big deal to see a deer track in southern Michigan.
Really?
Michigan Outdoors, is that Fred Trost? Was that the show Fred Trost used to host?
Well, yeah. At first it was Morton F. Morton F's the one that started it, and then Fred Trost got it, and he got sued by Buck, whatever that scent company was. And now, now it's owned
what was that all about? What was that all about?
Well, he was saying that using ammonia was no different than using these buck lures and stuff like that. They were just basically.
Oh, so they sued him for defamation?
Yes. and they
Wow.
put him out of business, and now Jimmy Gretzinger owns Michigan Outdoors, and it's a really good show now.
Okay.
Fred was kind of different anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I grew up watching that show once in a while, you know.
With Fred?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every once in a while when
Morton
I
Neff was the predecessor of Fred when Morton Neff had it. He wasn't really a hunter. I think he was an alcoholic, but he did a really nice show, and Jimmy Gretzinger does a really nice show.
Mm.
I've spent decades as both an alcoholic and a hunter.
You're well seasoned.
I just gave up drinking not that long ago.
I've never
except for tonight.
No, I'm drinking NA.
Oh my god! Oh well, I would have got that one wrong on the test. Okay. Yeah.
Didn't trust him, eh, Ben?
No, I didn't. Well, that was an interesting comment you made about so if we were graphing deer populations over time in southern Michigan, the low point was the 60s, and it was on a steady sort of increase up till now. Would that be
that would be a very not just
Yeah.
Michigan. I'm talking
most
big ag areas, northern Ohio, northern Indiana. You know, when you get down into southern Ohio, southern Indiana, southern Illinois, you know, the mountain areas kind of run through there. So that's timber. Any place where there was big, huge stands of timber, there was a lot of deer numbers. But in the ag areas, there was hardly any deer. I mean, I've talked to guys in Illinois and Kansas that, man, when they saw deer track in the 60s, that was a big deal.
But I mean, back then there was less chemical sprays. They weren't farming lot line to lot line, so there were more buffers. Why were was it more predators, or what were the factors you think that?
Well, they had deer drives. Gun hunting was the primary thing.
Okay, more hunters. Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. But there was deer drives. Now, if you cross somebody's property line, they freak out and they call the law. There was less habitat. There wasn't any CRP fields.
Yeah. Okay.
There weren't any landowners that don't allow hunting where you got sanctuary areas. All the areas were pretty much getting hunted, and the farms were groomed a lot different back then. Farms were groomed. The fence rows were clean. They didn't have brush growing all over in the edge, you know, and and a lot of the timber areas that you see now in these farming areas, back then they used to be pastures. You know, a lot of you can go through something that looks like a 100-acre parcel. Looks like, you know, this has been here for hundreds of years. This timber is pretty big. Odds are really, really high, if it's not swamp, that was pasture back in the 40s, 50s, or 60s. And then they let it go for pasture, and it turned into timber and understory with, you know, good.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So the quality adjustment of the acreage got a lot better over that time period.
Yeah, the deer it became a lot better deer habitat.
Yeah.
Protected their property. Back when I was young, you know, I did gun hunt when I was young. Deer drives, shoot, you just went through several sections. Didn't matter whose property it was. You just go deer out.
Why is the UP not a shell of what it once was?
Wolves. The wolves they introduced it just decimated the UP. When you look at the UP, it's
but even
like,
when I was a young man living in the UP in my early 20s, it still wasn't like as good as it had been 20 years prior, and wolves were not a factor then, so it can't be entirely wolves.
What years are you talking about?
Well, I was living up there and hunting up there in the mid 90s.
You sure there weren't wolves there?
There might have been a few, but not enough to have an impact.
There might have been several years of bad winters, because if you live in the UP, if you have a bad winter, it can kill 90% of the deer. And now once they've introduced wolves up in the UP and like in northern Wisconsin, you know, you got cedar swamps, and deer might migrate 15 miles from their normal core areas to these cedar swamps to winter for the year. You know, they are up in these big, huge cedar swamps. And now that there's wolves, once the snow gets very deep and the deer are in these cedar swamps, maintain themselves and stay out of the cold winds, that's just like a big buffet, because the snow gets so deep they can't leave them. and they're stuck there, and the wolves predate the crap out of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, even like for bears their ease of kill for large prey is easier when there's more snow on the ground.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also there used to be rabbit trials up there and coon trials where big groups of hunters would go up there and run their dogs and have contests, and in the summer and in the early fall. They quit doing that because if the wolves hear dogs baying, they'd cut them up and snatch them up and kill them and take them back into the brush and eat them before the guys could catch up.
Yeah, that when this past year when I was up there for a couple of days of grouse hunting, when the sun was getting low and when those wolves started howling, my one dog was like trying to climb up my butt. It's not a like it's not a you don't feel too comfortable.
So
But,
I have
so-
to ask. I grew up steelhead fishing more than I hunted.
Yeah.
And I've always been curious. The day before I moved to Montana in 1997, I went out in February and caught a steelhead on the White River, just north of Muskegon.
Yep.
And
Fished there before.
And I've never fished for steelhead since that day. And so I'm just curious, how has the steelhead fishing picture changed over the last 30 years?
It's not as good. I can remember back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, the limit was 5. Now on a lot of the rivers, the limit's 1. Of some of the rivers, it's catch and release only, like Pure Marquette and Baldwin.
Yeah.
White River, I fished that a lot over in Hesperia and down. I don't think there's a river on the west side of the state that I haven't steelhead fished in, but I don't do it as much as I used to. I love eating steelhead. I have a special recipe for steelhead, and my kids now if I need steelhead, they give me steelhead in the spring when they go fishing. So I don't go as much. And I just can't do what I used to do physically. Wear waders. I was a river rat with waders, so I wasn't a boat guy.
So the Pierre Marquette,
Yeah.
there was a no kill and there was a flies only section. But when they made it flies only, you could still spin fish with flies. And as I only fly fish, and so there'd be guys with the little bit of yarn and the biggest treble hook in the world, and just dredging through there. And that always rubbed me the wrong way. And I remember I was walking to a spot and the guy was fighting one and he was so happy and he cajoled me into netting that fish for him, and I wish I would have just missed the net so he could.
Oh, you would have hated us. We fished the flies only stretch on the PM when we were kids, and my dad would give us a bunch of treble hooks and some yarn.
Yeah,
and we were fishing
salmon.
Snagging, went to snagging salmon. Yeah.
Now,
I gotta ask about this steelhead preparation.
Yeah.
What's that?
Preparation?
Yeah.
Well, I used to build custom rods. You remember Dick Swan?
Mm-mm.
No? Okay, I used to build custom rods, light line rods, strictly for 2 and 4 pound test fish. So basically you're using 11 to 13 foot long rods, and you could basically take the tip and touch it to the butt. That's how limp they were.
Okay.
And so I used to build those. I'd sell them back in the 70s for $300 a piece because you couldn't buy a good light line steelhead rod back then. Everything was for like 8, 10, 12 pound tests. So you couldn't buy a light line. You had to buy it custom made. And so I typically fish with either wigglers, spawn bags, or skein, raw spawn cut into chunks. That's what I typically fish for. A lot of times I fish with bobbers, just Carlisle bobbers with
Sure. Oh, yeah. So when that's all good information, but what I meant was how you have this steelhead,
the cooking recipe.
Dish.
Oh, okay. I got that recipe from an actual river guy, steelhead and salmon river guy. And I fillet the fish, then I take out the little bone that comes up off the spine, the 45
Y bone.
Yeah, I take that. Well, they don't lie like a pike, but they're straight. I take those bones out and I cut the steelhead about probably 3/8 of an inch thick. And then they're maybe 3 inches long and, 1.5 inches, 2 inches wide. And the recipe that I've got, and there's no bones in any of it. And the recipe I've got is I've got 3 pans. The first pan has flour in it. The second pan has eggs and a ton of garlic salt. And for some odd reason, McCormick's garlic salt seems to be the best. And then the third pan has cornflake crumbs. And you can actually buy cornflake crumbs already
Crumb? Oh,
already crumbed in any grocery.
crumb.
Pre-crumbed.
Who knew?
Yeah.
Yes, and you can get them in any grocery store. So I would take oil. Typically I'm cooking them in a fryer, like a Fry Daddy thing. And I would take the steelhead and I would dip it into the egg first, egg with the garlic salt. And you can't put too much garlic salt in. So you dip it in that, and then you put it in the flour. I'm sorry, you put it in the flour first. You put the fish in the flour, get it white on each side, dip it in the egg and garlic salt, totally cover that, and then you put it in the cornflake crumbs, and then from that it goes into the cooker. And something about garlic salt, and it's the only recipe I've ever used this on as far as fish, that it tasted good. Because steelhead typically don't taste that well. They're pretty flat,
Yeah.
they don't have a lot of flavor. So for some odd reason, that recipe just works great on steelhead. It's my favorite fish. I would rather eat that than perch. Or trout.
Really?
Yes.
That's a bold claim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I've got a special recipe for pike. And,
Yeah. Can I ask? Do you, whether it's got a clip fin or a wild reproduced fish, does that influence if you harvest it or not?
I can tell you're a purist because you even think about that. No, that does not slightest.
Yeah, I couldn't. So I've never killed a steelhead in my life.
Well, I've eaten over 1,000.
Yeah, and so now I've got
Ben's share.
Yeah. So I've got John who kills the beloved steelhead, and Matt's the only person I know that's eaten a permit, which is like anathema. And so still, Matt, when I first think of you, the first thing that pops in my head is the guy who killed a permit.
Oh yeah, I did.
That's
I
good.
did it just to kind of as a fuck you to the bourgeoisie fly fishing community.
You could have just said to me.
I
speared it. I speared it.
Oh my
Really?
gosh.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
killing
I don't know how well known this is, but they like reefs.
They like
yeah,
what?
well,
They like reefs.
that's where they spawn. That's also their. They'll go past that. They're a very certainly not a pelagic fish, but they do venture to a lot more areas than like a bonefish. So you can find them in a lot of situations and target them that way. But it's a delicious fish.
That's something I always wanted to do, is go bowling fishing. That just looks so cool, sitting up on the front of a boat, looking over shallow water and then casting to them. But something about fly fishing, I'm not a fly guy. Okay. I tried it with a guy once and it blew me away. It was on the Pier Marquette, actually. We were just fishing for brown trout in the summer.
Yeah.
And this shocked me. He gave me, I kind of learned how to cast a little bit, and he gave me some upright mayfly flies. The wings were upright. So I'm flogging the water to death, and I'm not catching shit. Okay. And he's about 100 yards up and 80 yards in front of me. I can see him. He's catching fish damn near every freaking cast. Now, he gave me these flies. Okay. I don't own any flies. So I got pissed off. I was pissed off because I know I'm not that bad at anything, really. Not that bad, where I can't catch shit and he's wet. Now, obviously, he's fly fishing. He's a lot better presentation than me, but I should still be at least getting hits. I walked up to him and I said, "Okay, Ken, what the fuck's going on here? You're up here catching fish almost every cast, and I can't even get a hit." And he said, "Well, what are you using?" I said, "Well, I'm using the freaking flies you gave me. These mayflies. I didn't know the difference between an upright wing and a spent
Mhm.
wing.
Mhm.
You know, I'm not a fly guy. And he said, well, here, try these spent wings. That's all they're hitting right now. And I'm like, well, then why didn't you give me some before? So I go back down there, and I was catching a fish every second or third cast once I switched to those
just wanted-
spent wing mayflies. That was the
Yeah.
only wings were laying on the water instead of upright. That was and the fish that made a difference.
Yeah.
And it was during the hatch, so they had their option.
Yep. They're picky eaters at that point, and you gotta be with what's in their sort of
That's
sphere
really
of
interesting.
awareness.
I'm inclined to believe you, John. But I tend to think I do believe, but I tend to think there's a lot of mental masturbation that goes on with that thing.
Oh, without question. Without
Like
question.
where you're out fishing with a dude and he's like, and they're like, you have a green jig on.
Yeah.
And like, oh, now they're coming on the red jigs. You gotta switch over to the red. Now it's the yellow. They're hitting on the it's like these fish have ADD. Like they got predator ADD. I'm like, how could that possibly be? They're like,
let me give you
changing their. Aren't they eating just like one thing all day long? You know?
like a gypsy pig or whatever.
They're like, aren't they eating the same sand minnow all day? I mean,
I got to give you one other quick story because I am the type of person that believes a guy that's trout fishing with spinners or night crawlers can kick a fly fisherman's ass.
oh, absolutely.
And so I had this one avid fly guy, and we were going up to Alpena, and we were fishing the Thunder Bay River, and for browns, brooks, and rainbows, because they planted rainbows in it. And I knew how bad I was going to wax this guy. So I backpacked in. This is an all-day deal. I backpacked in a pack rod because I was repping for Berkeley at the time, and I had a 5-piece pack rod I put in my backpack with a spinner. And I said, okay, you start here because fly fishermen fish a lot slower than spinner fishing. Okay, so you start here, and I went about a mile downstream. And by the time with spinner fishing, you're casting upstream and you're reeling it faster than the current, so you can let it drop whenever you want to. And by the time I got to him, I had 44 trout in my creel. Well, only the limit, but I had caught 44. Hint, hint. And he had not caught a fish. And I said, well, I've got a backpack spinning rod in the back here with some spinners. You want to use it? And he couldn't grab it fast enough.
Oh, really?
And he started catching fish.
He's no purist.
He was not a purist.
He's out of the club. He's out of the club. Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's situations where because of the time it takes to reel in the spinning rod versus the fly rod you can pick up and go right again, you can get more fishable seconds, minutes, whatever in a given day. But most of the time you're right where you can just cover so much more water. Be so much more
plus
effective.
trout are just suckers for worms.
Yeah.
Well, with worms, it's a slower presentation. With spinners, you can cover water fast.
Yeah.
And I was using number 2 rooster tails.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That'll catch a lot of river fish. Could I ask John, I'm curious, it's a little different gear, but when we talk about the whole idea of recording exceptional deer or other animals into, record books. And I think Boone and Crockett, they sort of, the language is something like we should celebrate these achievements or something like that. They use the word celebrate. But does having a name attached to the animal, does that help hunting, or does that kind of feed into
a name?
Yeah, like because I assume
okay, having a score attached to it, you mean?
Well, having the ability, I don't know if this is the case or not, that they're sort of publicly divulged where you can look up and see that in a given state, you've got the record.
Yeah. Oh, you mean the name of the hunter? Okay.
The name of the hunter.
Okay. Yeah.
So does the publication of that, does that serve the interest of
Me?
non-pay hunting? Well, of getting as much access and making hunting
Yeah,
as
anytime let's be realists, okay? For probably 90% of the hunters that are killing animals at a regular, somewhat consistent basis, depending on where they're at, the size of the animal depends on where they're hunting, obviously.
Yep.
Hunting is an egotistical activity, just like fishing is. If fishing and hunting were not an egotistical activity, nobody would ever take a photograph of it. Okay. You always want to show it off to your buddies. Who's got the biggest one, whatever. It's a dick measuring contest sometimes. And, yeah. And if you want to measure your skill set, there's no other way to measure it, how good you physically are, unless you're competing against a lot of other hunters on the same ground, like public land or free permission properties.
Yeah.
So when you're hunting against a lot of other competition and you are consistently outperforming them, your ego wants to give you, somehow you want to get accolades for that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just sustenance hunters and you'd never take a photo of an animal. You'd never take a photo of fish. You'd never show it to anybody because it's so personal. So, people
yes.
have an ego.
Yeah, those impulses, that egotistical impulse is terrible for hunting. I would argue.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's terrible for access. It's terrible for like people's motivations or reasons for hunting. It promotes like hoarding and greed. Yeah.
Without question, it promotes hoarding and greed. Yeah, back before this whole trophy thing started, I think probably in the early 90s. That's when the TV shows started coming on, and if they're killing big bucks because it's ultra managed property, they don't have any competition. They're letting them grow till they're big enough to kill. And it's just something everybody likes to see, big animals. Everybody likes to catch big fish. And so they're falsely encouraging people to do that. And what's the best way to kill a big animal? Buy a bunch of property and don't let anybody else on it. So, the United States, as far as hunting is concerned, other than public lands, hunting is becoming European style. It's getting to the point where it's just for people that that are rich, that have a lot of money. There's always going to be public lands, but as these private properties where you used to be able to knock on doors and get free permission, that's coming to an end very, very quickly because everything is getting bought or leased. I hate it. That's just the way it's going, and it's not going to change, unfortunately. Where few people are buying properties or leasing properties and not letting anybody else hunt. I was doing seminars at the Wisconsin Deer Expo probably 10 years ago. And I had a guy, and I was also selling books. So I got a free booth to sell books. And I had this older gentleman come in, and he lived in Iowa. I was talking to him. He said, "Yeah, I'm from Iowa." I'm like, "Well, what the hell are you doing at a Wisconsin deer show?" I was far superior to Wisconsin, as far as big bucks.
Yeah.
And he said, I live in Zone 5, which is the #1 zone in Iowa. It's the South Central zone in Iowa. And he said, I used to be able, and he was my age. So he was in his mid-60s at the time. He said, I used to be able to hunt anywhere I wanted. I knew all the farmers. I knew everybody. I grew up with their kids and stuff. I hunted anywhere I want. He said, I have no place to hunt down in Zone 5 anymore. And there's hardly any public land. So I'm coming up to Wisconsin to bow hunt because Wisconsin has a lot of public land. And I just think that's sad. I hate it.
Okay. So I guess, though, we'd all agree that hunting would be better off if the names of people who get entered into record books weren't published.
Absolutely.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
what blows me away about, in my mind, you roll the clock back to the 80s and you take out the social media and the TV. Right. The access picture contemporarily looks infinitely better to me. And still we idolize the people that did this.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
You mean that ruined it for everybody?
Yeah.
Well, we don't. a lot of hunters.
No, I meant collectively as a community. We do.
Yes, we do. You're absolutely right. Now, being from Michigan, which is the most heavily bow hunted state in the country, always
Oh, is it
has been.
really?
Oh, it's
There's
hands
more.
down.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, there's at least 50,000 more bow hunters in Michigan than there is any other state. We have about 350,000 bow hunters. Ohio, I think, is number 2. They got about 300,000. Wisconsin, about 260,000.
Okay.
That's the top 3, and Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's right up there as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, where was I going? Okay, so like in Michigan, it's so difficult because we have so many bow hunters, and also we're a 2-buck state. You know, all the other big buck states are $1, $1 in your.
Are you guys still like
Illinois
4 point out of 8 point or better or something? Is that right?
No, 3-inch spikes.
Oh,
There's certain parts of the state that have APRs, antler point restrictions, up in the Northwest, but the majority of the state, probably 95% of the state or 90% of the state, is any legal antlered buck, which is 3-inch spikes.
okay. When I moved away from there, they had just instituted antler restriction in the southern third of the state or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Nope, not the southern. The only place where there's APRs are up Leelanau, up northwest of Traverse City, and then all the way down the western coast, down to just south of Ludington.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Zone 3 in the south, they do not have APRs. Your second tag, your first tag, you could shoot any legal buck 3-inch with 1 3-inch spike. Your second tag has to have 4 points or better on one side.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Okay.
Yeah, that's been around. That's been around forever.
Okay.
But I guess where I was going is when I shoot a buck in Michigan that makes book, I always enter it in the record book because I want the acknowledgement, because if I don't get the acknowledgement, people can't trust what I'm writing.
Oh, yeah.
I'm writing about hunting public land and free permission properties, which that's all I've ever done. Just regular, normal properties. I want people to understand that I think I know what I'm talking about because I've been so successful at doing it in the most heavily pressured state in the country with a bow.
Okay.
So I enter it because I lead off with that when I do podcasts or in an article. I like to mention that because I want, if you're not a credible writer, nobody has any reason to believe anything you're saying. So I'm trying to educate people that don't pay attention to this stuff to see on TV. I write that in almost every article I ever read, or every podcast, or every time I've do a seminar. I always bring up TV 100% of the time.
Okay.
And so I want people to realize if you're watching this fictitious crap on TV and you are trying to replicate their hunting methods on properties like in West Virginia or PA or Michigan or New York, where you got tons of hunting pressure, you're not going to be successful. So if you don't have the credentials to write and have somebody believe you, there's no sense writing it. Well, why should I believe this guy?
Yeah. So the framework or the hope is that we can keep the name association with Boone and Crockett, et cetera, because then you can then use that as a credentialing tool that ultimately is going to help the average hunter get the best success, all else equal.
Yeah, I don't do anything in Boone and Crockett. Everything I do is Polk
yeah.
Young.
Or well, yeah, yeah. So anything. So that's an interesting. It's an interesting argument where we have to.
Definitely.
Yeah. So
and you've been able to secure your credibility with your audience with shooting a couple deer a year. I mean, there's guys now that are shooting 20, 30 big game animals a year. And like, it terrifies me that that's what is being modeled as success to the next generation of hunters. And it almost seems like these guys like Cam Haines and John Dudley and Remy Warren, et cetera, like that they're generating these mountains of carcasses for the same reason, you know?
Well, I have to throw something in there because whenever you're hunting hard to hunt properties, public lands, wherever it's at, it's going to be more difficult. And I don't always kill bucks. 2017, 2018, and 2019, I never shot a buck.
Oh, really? Oh,
Really. I
But
never
you-
shot a buck. I never saw a buck all year in Michigan for 3 seasons in a row that I've
you didn't see a
Wow.
single deer?
no.
A single buck?
I never saw a buck that I would shoot.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I was going to ask that.
In 3 straight seasons in Michigan. So I had 3 totally buckless years. Now, 2 years ago, I shot 1 buck. This year, I shot 2 bucks that made the book and another buck in Indiana that didn't make book, but it was a nice spot.
Mm.
So, yeah, anytime you're hunting heavily pressured areas, you should expect to have seasons where you don't kill anything because it's that difficult.
Yeah.
So oh, go ahead, Ben.
I was just so if you reflect, and I don't know if you keep a journal or some more formal stats on any of this, but in terms of how hard you've had to work to get success, have your days of field, amount of scouting, prepping, have you had to put in more to get the same out?
I've been working really hard at it for years. Like,
Yeah. So
I mean, I like when I'm scouting public land in Michigan, I always tell everybody, you have to pretend everybody on this property or in this area that's hunting, and you're in a heavily hunted area, everybody's trying to kill you.
yeah.
Where are the only places on this property you may go that's dense enough and thick enough cover where you might get up and move during daylight hours? And that's the only places that I would go to hunt. So I've got to cross rivers with waders, rib boots, or a boat across the lake. I have to try and work. My state record buck in Michigan, I had to wade through probably 3/8 of a mile of a cattail marsh with need a thigh high water to reach this little island. Recreation area.
Wow.
Yeah. And I found that island. It wasn't something I saw on an aerial. Aerial didn't exist. I saw treetops out in the middle of this huge cattail marsh, and I put waders on and went out and found it. That's where I shot that big ass buck. So,
that is awesome.
I mean, but
That's
that,
awesome.
yeah, I mean, what could be more rewarding than something like that? And even if you would have seen the island on Onyx and, or knew, getting out there and sort of knowing it was there, putting in the hard work, but to discover it and that pleasant surprise, I mean, that's not a bonus. That's like the essence of why hunting's awesome.
You got to work at it. You got to be made to be detail or be successful. You have to, just like a fly fisher, you got to be very detail oriented. Like I do 90% of my scouting and location preparation in March and April.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I don't like entering into the woods where I'm going to be hunting prior to season because, the bucks I'm trying to kill, which are 3 and 4.5-year-old bucks, they've been left alone since January for the most part. Maybe a little bit of spring turkey season. But other than that, the woods has been pretty silent. And all of a sudden, on public lands in Michigan and PA and West Virginia's, all of a sudden in mid-August, there's this huge influx of human activity, people coming in and scouting and preparing their locations for pre-season. So they're educating the bucks before season opens to become nocturnal and go back in deeper into the bedding areas and not move out of the bedding areas until after dark. So I tried to find all these very remote locations and then leave them alone during preseason. Don't go back there and hope nobody else does as well. And then I may go back there and possibly catch a buck moving during daylight hours. But it just requires a lot of work, and I'll have 40, 50 locations ready to hunt every season before opening day. I may only hunt a dozen of them, but I got that many ready.
So back to you only hunt public land. I want to try something on you and see what you think. I only hunt public land. I have no interest in paying to hunt or, having a lease or anything like that. But for me, it's because, it's for two reasons. Because this playing field thing that we're talking about, where it's like, I don't want any handicaps or anything. I just want to do it the hard way. That's part of it. But the other part is that my fascination with hunting since I was a wee little kid it's been getting something by my wits that I can eat, or hang on the wall. And once you bring money into it, it's not like you got it by your wits anymore.
Yep.
So, what does any of that resonate with you, or like what are your thoughts on that?
100%. As soon as you bring money into it, it changes everything, because with money you can buy anything. You can go to a freaking enclosure and spend 20 grand and shoot a booner in an hour. Okay. So anytime you throw money into it, when I was a sales rep in the hunting industry, I rep for companies that sponsored TV shows, Tanks, for instance, or Scentlock, or Rivers West, or Rhino Blinds. A lot of these huge companies, Browning, they would actually pay these shows. On average, it was about $40,000 for a 6-month period to be a sponsor. And I'm going back into the 90s and early 2000s, and they would have multiple sponsors for a show. They'd have a dozen different sponsors. A lot of the guys that were actually on the TV shows, they were doing these commercials with these items that they've never used in their freaking life.
Oh,
They never getting paid 40 grand to endorse it and tell them how good it is. I mean, and I saw it personally.
I've heard rumors of that. I've heard rumors of that for years, that these guys are peddling products that they themselves don't use. But
absolutely, that's an absolute fact. I mean, there is so much misnomers in the hunting industry, even from the manufacturers. They can advertise and lie their asses off in advertisements. And, they show some guy with this monster buck in their ads in the magazine. Well, that buck probably came out of a damn enclosure. They probably spent 10, 15 grand, had this guy shoot this nice buck, and now it's in their ad. Like they killed it in the wild. And, it's just, they just blow smoke up everybody's asses, and it just drives me absolutely nuts.
What do you tell the youngsters that, well, not necessarily youngsters, all the people that you're mentoring through your programs? What do you tell them about gear? You don't strike me as the kind of person that thinks that they need to buy a new bow every year.
The bow sight on my bow is 40 years old. So is the quiver. My grip is wrapped with duct tape. Well, it's not duct tape, it's friction tape. I got friction tape around my bow. Now I'm on Matthews Pro Stats, so I get a new bow every year from Matthews, and I'm only shooting a 40-pound bow because my shoulders are so messed up. So I'm shooting a VXR, which is probably 5 years old. They send me new bows every year, but I'm still shooting the bow I had 5 years ago because I like it. I like the way it shoots. I like the way it holds. It doesn't weigh much. It's a longer axle to axle. So I am very adamantly against, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I am not a gear pusher whatsoever. Absolutely not. No. Okay. I'm still using Carbon Express arrows that are 20 years old.
Okay.
One thing that
sight is a PSE mongoose sight that was made in the 80s.
One thing that our little group really struggles with is all of the many, many instances where, because we very much are concerned about the future of public access, more so than ever as of 3 or 4 days ago, where it's become clear now that in this continuing resolution of the Farm Bill, they're stripping out the VIP HIP money, the money that has gone to fund these little access programs in various states around the country. So we're the Hunt Quietly group. We also work on this nonprofit that we've started called Hunters for Access, where we give appreciation gifts and do work projects for landowners that are enrolled in access programs. And one thing that really pisses us off is that the hunting industry in many cases works actively against access. You have like Real Tree and Mossy Oak that take the money we give them for clothing and use it so we have fewer places to wear the clothing.
Absolutely.
Through their real estate. Yeah. And then, I mean, these pro hunter types that have these sponsors, those sponsors, in effect, pay for their private hunting. Just south of here, there's a ranch. I live in Miles City, Montana. There's a ranch that used to be in block management, our state-run access program. And a few years ago, Lee and Tiffany leased that ranch, and they're still leasing it, but they lease it every year for $100,000 a year now. They spend on it. And who pays for that? Yeti coolers and Matthews Bows. That's one of their sponsors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, thanks, guys. And so one thing that we talk a lot about is trying to figure out how can we get the hunting industry to work on axes? How can we make, instead of having hunting heroes, you're self-excluded. You strike me as the guy that's doing the Lord's work. But these TV guys, like, how do we make it so that they're not the selling point, but instead what these companies do for public access is the selling point?
The only thing you can do is what you're doing. Educate them. There's really nothing else you can do because the manufacturers in the hunting industry, they care about one thing. They can tell you everything they want about how we're passionate we are about the future of hunting. That is BS. Most of the big hunting companies now have been bought by investment groups. Okay. I'm in the hunting industry. I'm very
yeah.
Okay. Plano has a big one. Paradigm's another big one. GSM is another big one. And these are all investment groups. They don't give a shit about anything but the bottom line. They could buy a company that's manufacturing really good products in the USA and put it under their umbrella of companies. And then they will take those same products, send them off to China and have them made for 1/5 the price.
Yeah.
Bring them back and sell them as, at the same retail and, quadruple their profit margin. That happens all the time. So anytime company is owned by an investment company, you have multiple owners in the investment group, and it's all about the bottom line, man. It's pushing people out as far as work, putting more work on fewer people, and lying to the consumers, telling them bullshit that is total BS because nobody sues them. The only way, nobody polices the hunting industry because it's too small. So the only way a hunting company is going to change from lying on some ads or something is if somebody sues them and proves it wrong. Well, no hunters are going to do that because they couldn't afford the litigation costs. So the only thing you can really do, and that's what I have been trying to do, is educate people to not pay attention to these TV shows because these guys are totally misleading you as far as how to hunt whitetails and what products to use. Because they'll, like I said, they're hypocrites. They'll say something works even if they don't use it. They're using something totally different in the same category. And it's just the only thing to do is through education. I don't think you're ever going to stop it. You may slow it down a little bit, but as far as stopping it, because there's too much money to be made by the hunting manufacturers, I don't think you're ever going to kill it.
John,
I wonder if Newman's dressing.
Yes, Paul Newman.
Yeah, so all that money goes to worthy causes. I sometimes wonder, could we start a hunting company that was like that? Like you sell coats or something, is it clothes, whatever, but all the proceeds go to access.
You could, if you wanted to invest the money to get that started.
Yeah,
it would be an expensive venture because the hardest thing to do is get a company started.
Yeah.
Marketing, the marketing is a huge, huge cost to spread it out to everybody. Thank God with the internet, you can market stuff a little bit quicker. Now you don't have to print ads, but
I just don't know. I don't know if the hunting, there's just so much apathy.
Honey, you got to keep in mind also that like Michigan keeps buying public lands. I know of two places in southern Michigan where the state has actually bought farms and their public land. They were not 5 years ago.
Oh, that's awesome.
I really haven't seen, and I may be wrong, but I'm just saying I personally haven't seen where public land is converting the states are selling it, or the federal government selling what's now open to hunting public lands and making it into private, selling it back. That
Yeah.
program you're talking about, that's not turning public land into private property, correct? That one thing you were talking about a minute ago.
What
program?
Oh no,
The
it's
HIP.
not turning you. I think you said it backwards. It's not turning private land into public land.
It's not.
It's not doing that. No. So the you're talking about that farm bill thing I was talking about.
Yeah,
and
but
all that.
it's not taking public land and converting it to private land.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
No.
So
No,
we're not losing ground as far as we're not losing public land.
But you might lose the access in some instances to the public land. Yeah, no, it's
okay,
a fair.
I got it.
Our state run access program is called block management.
Okay. In
And
Montana.
it's funded by out of state hunting license fees. And there used to be like 7.1 million acres in it, and it's shrinking. It's down to 6.8 million acres now. And and there's a lot of concern about it because like there's more and more people that are willing to pay high prices to lease it. There's more and more outfitters buying for it. So like
I know exactly what you're talking about now. Because when I hunted in Colorado, they were leasing when I was elk hunting in Colorado, and that was in the late '90s. I know the federal government was leasing land to private landowners, and they were selling, they were leasing it from the government, which would have otherwise been open to the public. And, and then the guys that were leasing it, $10,000, $15,000 a hunt to consumers like you and I.
Yeah. So when I say like the hunting community, like, could you start a clothing company or some kind of brand where all the proceeds went to access? It's like, to me, I look at what's happening with access and I just think, and the survey data on this is pretty clear amongst hunters as well, that access is an issue.
Yeah, I think,
but I wonder, like, if you did something like that, would people buy it?
Well, yeah. The problem is it have to have such critical mass, because here I am in state XYZ and I'm going to buy my coat from this new clothing company. How do I know that it's not, maybe it opens up 100 acres in Utah, but I live in Pennsylvania. And is that enough of a motivating factor for that individual? It's a tough sell.
I don't know. Yeah, you're probably right. But like, I don't know. I just wish there was more like access zealots out there. Like, I have a guy come to my house once in a while from Washington, and he used to live out here apparently, but I didn't know him when he lived in Montana. But he hunts this ranch about 60 miles from here. And there's been 2 times where he's been going down there the next day and he's at my house and I give him a pack of halibut to give to the landowner, who I've never even met, because I'm like, man, it just is heartwarming. It's touching to me that this guy is letting on a few people, So I don't know. Like, I think you're right, Ben. If you can't demonstrate that they're having an impact in your state, how do you?
I would agree with that.
I can't get it out of my head that the world would be a better place if the hunting industry worked on access, and if when we bought products, some of the proceeds went towards access, instead of the opposite now, where you buy a product and there's a damn good chance that some portion of that money is going to work towards making it so there's fewer places you can go.
You're absolutely correct. I know in Kansas, They have walk-on property where the state paid.
We have a
$1.
Hunters for Access chapter in Kansas to
Okay.
support it's called the WEHA program, the Walk-in Hunter
Yeah.
Access. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called just WOH in Kansas.
No, it's WEHA.
Walk-on hunting.
Walk-in Hunter Access. WEHA.
In Kansas, I don't know what they're paying now, but when I started hunting out there in 2004, I think it was $1, right around $1 an acre. They were paying farmers to open up properties to hunting, and they just
Okay.
had on the corner post of the property, WEHA or WOH, walk on hunting,
Yeah.
and then the fence posts were painted. I think I don't remember what color they were painted, but anyway, it was just anybody could walk on, just like it was open to hunting public land. You didn't have to sign anything. Now in Michigan, we have farmers that allow people to come on their property, but they usually have a clipboard someplace where you have to go in and sign in because they only want X amount of people in there at a time. In Kansas, it's wide open. They don't have that. So I don't know how that's funded in Kansas. I don't know what money comes out of the Kansas government to pay the farmers for that. It must come out of hunting license sales, I would assume.
Yeah, and I think they've traditionally gotten some of this VIP HIP money that's going away, this Farm Bill money. I don't know if I said this earlier, but it stands for Voluntary Public Access Habitat Improvement Program. So I that's a great question. I need to reach out to our Kansas chapter president and ask him about that, because I don't have a good sense about how that program is funded. It does have 1.2 million acres. It's the second biggest program after our Montana Block Management Program.
Yeah. And that's how Iowa's funded as well, which is because that was a new program that really, you were consigned to a very finite number of properties if you wanted to hunt deer, pheasants, whatever in Iowa. Anywhere where there's good money in the row crops, there's not going to be much access.
Yeah. I've also seen lease properties like in Kansas. I've seen lease properties go back to the farmers where if you ask them correctly, they'll actually let you hunt. They got tired of these guys. Some of the lease guys, for 3 or 4 months, they don't want any of the farmers unless they've got, pasture on it or something. They don't want any of the property owners or their kids or grandkids on them with quads or anything. They want total 100% control. And the farmers are getting pissed off, especially the farmers with money. They're like, hey, I don't need the damn money. I'll just stop the leasing. And, if somebody comes and asks me nicely, I might let them hunt.
Yeah. But think how perverted the mindset of someone who's that anal about being on the property, that they couldn't even, drive the tractor through to do XYZ, that they're demanding this pristine bit for, even for whatever, $7,000-$10,000, just, it speaks to their intense desire to shoot the biggest buck to fill that ego.
Or how it speaks to what a shitty hunter they are. Not only can they not get one, they can't get one with not only do they need to have there be no other hunters, there can be no other human activity.
I am the only human that can be there. Yeah. Well, we should do a how-to video where if you're that hunter and the how-to, instead of here's how you shoot your bow, it's just how to open a checkbook and write the check. And just and that's the totality of it. And then you just flash to the biggest buck you've ever seen.
That's your hunting skill set, is how big your wallet is. And that's a lot of it now. I mean, I don't care what state you're in. I don't care if it's Florida. Back when I wrote my first book in 2003, there was one buck in Florida that made the Pope and Young record. One buck out of the entire state. And now I don't care what state you're in. There is land management going on everywhere where people are buying up, hoarding land, leasing land, ultra managing it, hinge cutting timber so it grows more understory so it's better deer habitat. Putting out food and crops and food plots so the deer never leave their property. They want to manage it to the point where they hope deer never leave their property so they can't get shot by the neighbor when they're. It's just sick. It's sick.
The term of manage the herd or manage my deer herd or hold deer on my land, that should be anathema to a hunter. Like that goes against, once you're there, you've gone to the dark side. And I don't see how it'd be hard to get excited about that. I don't know. John, would you differentiate between food plots and baiting? Are those pretty similar to you?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Okay.
Baiting is far easier than
Yeah.
a food plot because baiting, you're hunting a 3-foot destination spot.
Yeah.
A food plot could be, 80 yards long and 50 yards wide. It can be relatively big. So
Yeah.
you're hunting in a spot where you have to hope that deer still comes by you. But
Yeah.
baiting can be done on public land in a state where it's legal by anybody. Whereas typically, if you're hunting a food plot, you're on a managed piece of property. Okay. So you don't have any hunting competition on the property. You may share a lease with 1 or 2 other guys.
Yeah.
On, 400 or 500 acres, but 2 or 3 guys on 400 or 500 acres, nothing. And you're growing so many deer and letting so many bucks grow until they're 4.5 years old before they ever get targeted. So you're always going to have lots of mature bucks on the property, and you should kill one every year. So when I hear somebody tell me I shot this buck over a food plot, I immediately know they're not hunting public land, because I don't know of any public lands or free permission properties where farmers plant food plots for the guys that are hunting on the property. That just doesn't happen. So food plots are typically relegated to people that are leasing large chunks of property, or they own large chunks of property and they're keeping everybody else off.
Yeah.
But as far as hunting a bait pile over a food plot, a bait pile is a 3-foot destination spot.
Yeah.
They have to come to that spot. So you can set up in the tree where that's the only shot you've got.
Yeah.
Whereas a food plot, a deer can come out in different spots on a food plot without you getting shot.
Yeah. It's sort of like fish in a barrel versus fish in a swimming pool. Yeah. They're like in kind, but just the magnitude of it. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Good analogy, actually.
Yeah. It is, I'm just curious so the person who comes to your hunting tutorials or instructional events, like, is there a generic kind of characteristic of them? They've hunted for a few years and haven't had the success they wanted, or could you just describe that a little?
I have all types, and they come from all over the country. I have guys that are just getting into hunting. They've been bow hunting for maybe 2 years. I've had TV guys come to my workshops before. I think to see what I was all about, because I beat up on TV guys so bad. I think they wanted to come and see if I was legitimate, and they definitely found out that I was. So it's a cross section as far as people that come. I'd say on average, it's guys that want to be really good. They want to be better bow hunters than they are. So if they can shorten their learning curve, that's why they come to that, and it shortens their learning curve.
Yeah,
it's a visual. It's not like reading one of my books. You're actually seeing it in person. I get up trees. I just do a lot of different things that nobody else does out there.
Yeah, but I guess so. Maybe they have some notions of what the TV hunter or corporations have been selling them, but you can kind of undo some of that brainwashing where you can see them have aha moments.
Without question, I beat that into their heads while we're in the field on Saturday and in seminar on Sunday.
Okay, well, at least
that's something I never miss. If I can beat up on a TV guy or management guy, 100%.
But
I want people to know that's not reality.
Yeah, but even just what's effective and what's not, and so hopefully, in a best case scenario, you tell 20 of them. Maybe they're the best hunter in their group of 10 other hunters. They tell, those guys look up to the one guy who came to your class. And so you can build these concentric circles and maybe unfuck everything. That's
man, I never thought I would talk to somebody that had as much consternation for media hunters as I.
You know what? Hunters, regular hunters that hunt knock on door for free permission properties, public lands, and walk on properties, they spend a lot of time and a lot of money on hunting. And if they're watching TV guys and trying to replicate that and expecting it to work, which it does not, they want to learn how to hunt. They want to learn how to hunt in natural environments, hunting white oaks, hunting red oaks,
Yeah.
hunting at lost apple trees that used to be in a pasture, hunting primary scrape areas, hunting a scrape line, hunting pinch points in transition corridors and stuff. They want to learn how to hunt. They want to know how high up the tree they need to get so they don't get picked when the foliage is down. And I go through all of that stuff, and I just constantly say, you can't watch TV guys and hunt like them and expect to kill deer where you're at. First off, the deer they're killing don't exist where you're at. And second off, they're hunting places where there's no competition. Just like I talked about before, there's no competition. And without competition, you have no skill set. You have no skill set unless you can form a skill set against competition. There's no such thing as a skill set.
Yeah. We need to push for a disclaimer that has to be put on all hunting media at the beginning, like where if you're watching a historical reenactment, like this is a dramatization, it's not real. If we could get that put in, so maybe that's our next GoFundMe.
Yeah, and they used to do all these TV shows, even in enclosures. They don't do enclosures much anymore, but a lot of the TV guys hunt on pay-to-hunt ranches where they don't have to pay for their kills in lieu of advertising the ranch.
So, John, I'm curious. So I think you told me in our previous chat that you received offers to hunt some of these exclusive ranches.
Oh, I get it. I have had offers all the time to hunt managed properties. I just will not do it. I had an offer to be a co-host, the whitetail expert, if you will, on the number 3 TV show at the time. And it was the number 3 TV show for 15 years. Mm-hmm. And I said, where would I hunt? And he knew me. We were friends. And he just grinned and he said, well, you'd be hunting on pay-to-hunt ranches most of the time, but we don't have to pay for it because we advertise the ranch. And I just grinned back at him and I said, I won't do that. Mm-hmm. As soon as I kill something on a pay-to-hunt ranch or lease or something like that, my credibility is gone.
Yeah.
My credibility is shot. And I've had people offer me money to endorse things in my book or on my podcast, pay me money to say, hey, you just tell them you use this stuff like the TV guys do. They lie. I've never taken money to endorse anything. If I endorse it, it's because I personally used it and I know it's the best or one of the best items in the category that it's in.
Yeah. So I think so you found someone, Matt, who has the same disdain for hunting media and media personalities, but I think it probably matches you in terms of dislike of Sitka. And now there's a great reason. And
yes,
I have much less knowledge of this than John, but it seems to me Sitka and First Light, in terms of whitetail or anything where scent matters, are utterly useless. You might as well just go to Goodwill without activated carbon.
Well, yeah, but they don't claim to be.
They don't claim to be.
They claimed it.
Oh, they do.
First Light claim.
Oh yeah, a lot of the big clothing companies, they'll put an antimicrobial treatment in their exterior garments, or they'll put some silver in it, and those are antimicrobial. But to put an antimicrobial in an exterior jacket or an exterior pant is meaningless because it's not touching your skin. For an antimicrobial treatment or silver to work, it's got to be physically touching your body, and it kills the bacteria. But even if you did have antimicrobials against your body that were killing the bacteria, you have over 300 different odor type molecules other than bacteria coming out of your body all the time. So it's not doing anything for that. And also it's not doing anything for the odor of the dead bacteria. Yeah, it's killing bacteria so it doesn't multiply as rapidly, but it's not doing anything for the odor of the dead bacteria or all the other odor molecules that come out of your body all the time as long as your heart's beating. So, they lie. They definitely give false stuff out there because people just hear antimicrobial and they automatically assume, oh, it's going to work. An antimicrobial on an exterior jacket, it's like spraying the outside of your house because you got ants inside.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. It's not doing anything for ants on the inside because you're spraying outside.
Yeah. Okay.
But you do think that scent lock works?
No, I don't think scent lock works. I'm 100% positive scent lock.
Oh, Okay, as a research scientist, I'm innately skeptical of a lot of claims. I need a lot of evidence. So,
Well, let's put it this way. When I started bow hunting in 1965, I hunted from 65 through 1996, paying 100% attention to wind direction. In those 32 seasons, I shot 8 bucks with a bow that made the record. From 1997, when I started properly caring for, properly storing, and properly using scent lock in conjunction with other scent-free items, from 97 through 2023, I shot 48 book bucks. So that's a 27-year period where I killed 48 versus a 32 period where I killed 8.
yeah,
The only difference was I was using activated carbon. It's not scent.
well, there was a lot more differences. There's a lot. You were more experienced.
Not that much more experience. I was killing nice bucks in the 70s for the area that I was hunting.
Hold on one second here. I'm gonna hit pause and because I gotta change the cord on this laptop is not charging. 1 second. Okay, we're back. So
Okay.
I would imagine you have more than just that. You probably feel like the deer you're like, boy, I wouldn't have got away with that 3 years ago.
I've had
What you know what I mean? Like
literally,
without my suit on.
I've had thousands of deer downwind of me where I know 100% I would have gotten winded from that.
Really?
Really. And when, you know what? Scentlock is probably the only hunting company I know of that actually got sued in the early 2000s. Scentlock got sued by 4 hunters from Minnesota.
I remember this.
And that ended up in a Florida court. It was a district court in Florida. And they had Scentlock send clothing to Rutgers University. And at Rutgers, they actually have an activated carbon laboratory and staff scientists that's what they do. They study activated carbon and they have classes on Rutgers University up in the Northeast. And when they tested Scentlock, they tested it using 10,000 times more human-sized molecules than the human body could produce in a 24-hour time frame. Scentlock absorbed 96 to 99.9% of all the molecules and 100% of the surrogate odor. And then it also said, because a lot of people said you can't reactivate activated carbon, which you can't really reactivate it. You can deabsorb it like squeezing a sponge. It also said we also proved without hesitation that you can deabsorb activated carbon in a household. Even though it only gets up, because the household dryer, you know how deabsorption works?
Yeah.
Okay. This is very easy. You're familiar with Mackinac Bridge?
Yeah.
You're familiar with concrete highways?
Yeah.
And you're familiar with the Twin Towers structures that were made out of steel? They had steel structures.
Mm-hmm.
All of those have expansion joints. Concrete highways have expansion joints every so far on the highway. The Mackinac Bridge has 26 expansion joint sections on that bridge. Okay. So when it's 80 degrees out and sunny, what happens? The sun creates heat, and the molecules in the steel, they begin to move more rapidly and they expand. That's what an expansion joint is for, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Now that happens on 80, 90 degree days. So if you take an activated carbon line suit that's been used and it has a lot of human odor molecules within the activated carbon pores, when you throw it in the dryer is a typical household dryer gets about 155, 60 degrees. A commercial dryer gets to about 175 degrees. The heat from the dryer actually causes the carbon molecules or carbon particles to move more rapidly, and the molecules that are within the pores of the carbon move more rapidly. So a high percentage of the molecules actually break free from that bond and exit out the dryer. So that's the deabsorption. To reactivate carbon, because the way carbon is made into activated carbon is you have not carbon, but like wood or
Charcoal,
coconut shells. That has to be heated at 1450 degrees Fahrenheit while it's under pressure. That's how activated carbon is actually made. So obviously you can't reactivate carbon in a suit because you can't get it to 1450 degrees, but you can deabsorb it. It's like taking a sponge and filling it up with water. And then when you squeeze it out, a lot of the water leaves, but the sponge is still damp. It still has water in it, but it's gotten rid of most of it.
Okay, but like, it's not on your face.
You wear a face mask. You wear
Sure
a
you do.
drop
You
down
wear a
face
face
mask.
mask.
Yeah, the only
What
thing
about
is
your breath?
over your mouth and it's over your nose.
Oh,
The only thing showing is right there. That's the only thing
so
showing.
I could go. I hunt in the mountains for 10, 12, 14 days at a stretch. I could bring one of those suits and just walk right.
Not
You
Wear it
need
every
multiple.
day.
You need more than one for that
It's-
long. Yeah.
after depending on the weather, and like if you're sweating your ass off, you probably should deabsorb the suit every two times you use it. But normally when it's, typically it's 30 to 50 degrees out and you usually have a layering garment underneath and you're wearing a mid-weight suit, usually you don't have to deabsorb them, but about every 5 or 6 months. So,
Okay.
and I'm talking, when I say 5 or 6 hunts, I'm talking about morning hunts or evening hunts. So you're sitting in a tree maybe 5 hours.
Okay.
So you couldn't take something for 14 days. You'd load it up too much to the point where I think probably by days 6 or 7, it's probably going to lose some of its effectiveness and some of your odor is going to permeate through the activated carbon liner.
Okay.
So, John, if I deabsorb after every hunt, am I limiting the useful life of a scent lock garment?
Probably if you deabsorbed it more frequently. A garment's good for about 8 to 10 years with normal use, for like a weekend warrior that hunts 3-4 months a year, weekend warriors.
Yeah.
Suit's good for about 8 to 10 years. So if you say, let's say you have a lightweight suit for early season hunting and a midweight suit that you can layer under for mid season and late season. If you use those two suits equally throughout the season, you get 16 to 20 years out of the two suits.
Okay.
So they're 8 to 10 years per suit. And obviously, early season, like if you live in Florida or Louisiana or Alabama where it's super hot and you're perspiring a lot, that thing's going to load up a lot faster. And you're probably not going to be wearing much for undergarments. So you're going to have sweat actually permeate onto your physical suit. And when you sweat, you're also giving out body odors. Like if you wear a white shirt 10 to 15 times to a funeral or a wedding or whatever, when you're sweating in your armpits, you're going to have yellow spots underneath your armpits, and that's from body oil. So anytime you're sweating profusely, that suit's not going to last as long if you're physically getting the suit wet as well with sweat.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I would say, Matt, my kind of moment where I was a believer was a time where I was, up in a tree and a doe family group bedded in line with my scent cone at various yardages. And the lead doe put her nose up in the air a few times thought something was maybe up, but then sat back down. So it was a pretty neat thing. So
I even had one of those suits at one. I mean, I don't remember. The memory has grown short. I've been hunting for freaking 41 years, But I even had one of those suits one time, and I like just came to the conclusion it wasn't working. But maybe I was using it elk hunting. I don't even remember.
What? I would guarantee 85, 90% of people that have owned scent lock suits did not use them properly, did not care for them properly.
Okay.
When I do seminars, I'm out of the seminar circuit anymore. I quit doing those. But when I do seminars, I would typically, when we get to the scent control part of the seminar, I'd ask people, okay, how many people in this room have used scent lock before? Typically half the hands went up. And I'm talking about guys that are in their 20s, maybe to 60 years old. So a lot of these guys had bought scent lock suits back in the 90s and maybe early 2000s. Okay, so I'm like, okay, how many of you guys, typically half the hands would go up. Okay, how many of you guys, put your hands down, how many of you same guys that have used scent lock in the past used it and got winded. At least 3/4 of the hands that went up that were using sunlock went back up because they were getting
Okay.
Okay. So I
Yeah.
said, okay. And I expect that. I totally 100% expect that because you watch TV and the TV guys, they wear a sunlock jacket and sunlock pants. They got a stinky ass hat on, like I've got a regular logo cap on. They got hair hanging out here. They've got beards. They'd have their neck exposed, their faces exposed. 40% of your odor comes out of your head.
Oh yeah, no way I was taking it to that level. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Well,
gotta get-
anyway. So, anyways,
you have a scent lock hat, a scent lock face
Well, you-
mask.
got to be a whole face covering. It's got to cover your neck. It's the only thing showing is your beady little eyes.
Okay. And then gloves. You wear
Gloves, got to be gloves. If you're using sticks that have fabricators on them, those fabricators have to be washed in non-scent detergent and hung outside.
okay.
Backpack, this is where I got most of the guys. Okay, how many of you guys that are getting winded, that had gotten winded, how many of you wore a scent lock head cover with a drop-down face mask that covered your whole face? Not many hands went back up. Most of them were using a logo hat, just like the TV guy, or a scent lock ball cap like this that just covered the top of your head. So
With me, it might have been.
Yeah.
It could have been that I shit my pants a lot.
no, that would
The scent lock should capture the gas part. So
it won't capture a fart because a fart's kind of compressed air, so it's pushing with a lot.
okay.
Some of the
Okay.
fart will escape, depending on how many layering garments you have on,
Yeah.
or if it's early season and you got a really thin
Yeah.
suit.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
anyway, most of them didn't wear the head cover with drop down face mask. And then when I'd say, okay, how many of you use a backpack or a fanny pack? Typically, almost every hand that went up that had originally worn a scent-lock suit went back up that they used the backpack. I said, okay, now how many of you washed that backpack frequently during season in scent-free detergent, hypoallergenic scent-free detergent like Tide or Purex or whatever, washed it in scent-free detergent, let it dry outside, and then kept that backpack in an airtight container so it wouldn't get contaminated with odors until you physically went hunting? You know how many hands go up? 0. Almost every time, no hands go back up. So I say, so you guys are out there in a tree. A lot of you aren't wearing a head cover, and 40% of your odor comes out of your head. And then those that are wearing a head cover that might have still gotten winded, you've got a backpack in the tree that you get into with your bare hands every day, 2 or 3 times while you're reloading for the next hunt. You've got a huge human scent wick in the tree with you. And if you get winded, what are you going to do? You're going to blame it on your scent lock suit. It didn't work. While it's your stupidity having a backpack in a tree that's a human scent wick, that's why you got winded.
So what's tough is that it's binary.
You don't like you think you should be using like scent-free laundry detergent, stuff like that.
I don't wash my scent lock suits. My scent lock suits.
But if you were gonna, with this backpack example.
Yeah, you'd use either Tide or Purex, Arm & Hammer.
You can use Tide.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Okay, whoa. You got it. That's another industry deal there, okay?
Yeah, that's where I'm going, because I've always thought that was ridiculous. Like a deer isn't gonna go, oh, that's Tide. I smell Tide. There must be a guy there.
Do you honestly think that hunting companies own soap companies? Do you think all these companies that sell hunting companies that sell scent-free detergent and scent-free soap and scent-free shampoo, you actually
grandma's down in the basement with some lye, and
you think they actually make that shit?
Yeah,
that's where Lieber comes in, and Procter and Gamble and all these other companies. They buy that stuff from them, and they just package it in their own 16-ounce containers and sell it for quadruple what it's actually worth. You can go buy a gallon of Arm & Hammer laundry detergent for $8, and it's hypoallergenic, scent-free detergent.
So John, it's
would I be worried? I mean, to me, it seems like the deer wouldn't even care if it did smell like Tide, like.
No, well, when you buy
or perfume,
if it's lavender, that's probably not okay.
Yeah, because
why would they care about that? It doesn't smell like a dude.
Well, because it's synthetic. It's nothing that they'd encounter in the woods.
It's
right?
like, another thing I've always been skeptical of is like cover scent. Like if I could smell two things at once,
Right.
I could smell I could smell my dinner and also smell that, I don't know, there's a candle burning. So you tell me a deer, like, he can only smell the skunk spray you put on yourself and he can't smell your stinky ass?
Remember me talking about the marketing and hunting companies, how fictitious it is?
Yeah.
There you go. That's what it
Okay.
is. That's
Okay.
and it's the same thing with the detergents and you can buy Dove. Dove is a really high quality soap. You can go buy 6 bars of it at CVS, at Walgreens, Rite Aid, Myers, wherever you want, and 6 bars is going to cost you $10. You go buy 1 bar of Dead Downwind soap that's scent free, and it's probably going to cost you $8. It's going to cost you as much for 1 bar as it does to buy 6 Doves that are hypoallergenic, scent free.
What makes you really believable in this domain, John, is that if you bought into all of it, then it'd be harder to believe you. But you're like, no, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. This is bullshit. But the ScentLock suit is not bullshit.
I've proven to myself hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times the ScentLock is not.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm getting
Yeah.
one. I'm getting
Most
one.
of the other stuff is. And when you were talking about regular tide and Ben brought up lavender, you got to keep in mind when you are hunting for mature bucks in a pressured area where there's a lot of hunting competition, those bucks are super smart. Okay. So, yeah, you may use something that has a foreign odor to the woods that's not human. And, a 1.5-year-old buck, a 2.5-year-old buck, or a doe, and fawns may come in from downwind because they smell that, but they don't care. When you're hunting 3.5 and 4.5-year-old bucks, anything outside of what's normal should be there. If it's an odor they're not familiar with for that spot, odds are really high they're going to turn around and
Okay. Okay.
So it depends on what your target animal is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the time a deer's 4.5 years old, he's probably smelled 6 or 8 Tide washed backpacks before.
Sure, he's smelled a lot more than that.
Man, that's
Yeah.
what that guy smelled like that missed me last year. I'm not going over there.
Or maybe I should go there because I know he's a terrible shot. I'll take my chances.
Yeah, but he might
with
have
him.
been practicing.
That's another thing because the TV guys, they have 4 and 5 and 6.5-year-old bucks walk into totally exposed areas in broad daylight. That just doesn't happen in heavily pressured areas.
Yeah.
Bucks just don't make those mistakes. Everything is security cover oriented, unless they're with a hot doe. Then they think with their dick instead of their brain. But most of the time, they do not make themselves vulnerable in exposed areas.
Yeah. A lot of times, this last several years, I've been hunting whitetails in like cottonwood bottoms. It's just crazy. It'll be a mix of cottonwoods and then thick stands of Russian olive, like impenetrable. Those deer, they won't even step out into a 2 or 3 acre gap.
Right.
They just always hug the edge.
Always.
Like they're just brush rats. They don't feel comfortable even coming out into a little forest clearing.
They probably had a bad experience with it in the past while they were growing up. Whereas the TV guys, the deer they're hunting, have had no bad experiences with anything while growing up because they never got shot at.
Yeah.
I can remember hunting public land in southern Michigan, and I was in a pine tree. There was I'd say a 15-yard opening, totally surrounded by autumn olive and swamp, marsh grass and swamp. Just a little tiny weedy opening. And I heard a buck chasing a doe through the shit, down through the autumn olives, and he would breed her, and then I wouldn't hear anything for 20 to 30 minutes.
Wait a minute, you heard all this, but you didn't see him?
I didn't see him through the autumn olives. No,
how could you tell he was breeding her?
Because they'd stopped. You could hear a buck chasing. Okay, yeah, I can always tell when a buck's chasing a doe. You can tell by the speed they're moving, and then they stop. Well, when they stop, that means he's breeding her.
Well,
And
couldn't
then
they just be taking a break or eating some
probably
grass?
not. Well,
Okay.
in my
All right.
mine, he was
Okay. All
doing it.
right.
And then what typically happens during a rut is they'll breed them because they're in estrus for 28 to 32 hours. And then the doe will bed down, and the buck, if it's really dense, he'll bed down 10 or 15 yards downwind of the doe. And then every 20 minutes to half hour, he'll get up and he'll go over and push her, and she'll get up and she'll play the little chase game again, and she'll run 40, 50 yards, 100 yards, and then he'll breed her again. And then they lay back down. So anyway, they kept getting closer. And about 11 o'clock in the morning, they're coming right up to where this opening is. This doe ran out in the middle of this opening. She's right there on my left side. Okay. Right there. Chip shot. And she stopped. And she turned her head around and she's looking behind her. And her tail's just wagging, you know.
Yeah.
And I could hear the buck slowly coming through the autumn olive, because that's the autumn olive stuff you're talking about, that really dense, brushy shit. And he came up right to the edge. His nose got right to the edge of the bush. And he just stopped right there. And he looked at that doe, and that doe would wiggle her tail, you know, like, come on, man, let's keep going. Let's do it again. And that buck stood there for, I'll bet you, 3 minutes, which is an eternity. And then he turned around and he walked back into that autumn olive, and that doe turned around and went right back in behind him.
Oh.
He would not step out into that little tiny open area during daylight hours. He wouldn't make himself vulnerable in that spot.
Did you get a peek at him?
Yeah, I could see his antlers, but I couldn't shoot. It was all
He was pretty good.
It was 140 inch 10-point probably. Never saw him. I saw him.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just how smart they are. You don't see that on TV.
Yeah.
But I mean, so picking up on these things that you've amassed over the years, I mean, this is, I think, important for where we care about the quality of a hunt, but we also recognize everyone doesn't have that much time. And so why not, with whatever X number of days you've got to hunt outside of work and outside of family obligations, make it count, you know, do a little bit of prep, and it'll go a long ways. I think there's, you know, we can't be overstated.
I think that's why a lot of people come to my workshop. Yeah, I mean, if I bought a big salmon, okay, let's say I wanted to be a salmon fisherman back in the day. I got the downriggers, I got all the stuff. If I didn't know a lot about salmon fishing, I'd go on a couple salmon charters with somebody that knew what the hell they were talking about, and I would learn so much in that short period of time, and it may take me 5 to 10 years to learn how to do that on my own. So
no, that makes sense to me. You know, like we don't like R3 at all.
You don't like what?
Hunter recruitment.
Okay.
But we make a distinction between, or at least I do, between training and recruitment.
Yeah.
Like, it just drives me absolutely bananas that our hunting nonprofits work on recruitment.
Yeah.
You know, they're like so recruitment orientated, but like, yeah, but I don't take a strong stance against helping people learn how to do something, you know?
Yeah. Recruitment is all, it's kind of hard to recruit when there's no place to hunt.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of it's insidious and unethical to pull somebody into something or attempt to, knowing that they're going to have a miserable experience and have less money in the bank because they're going to have outfitted themselves. But I mean, there's an interesting point there of you know, going out with a charter captain or someone who's knowledgeable, because there's a fine line of you know, like your example with discovering the island.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's parts of the learning curve that are fun, and when too many things get shortened, that success payoff, you know, isn't quite as grand. And I struggle with, like, what's the right amount? You know, when does it become too much?
Yeah, and that's different for everybody.
Yeah, and
you may not be too much for somebody else.
Yeah, and
yeah, there's something to be said for figuring shit out yourself in terms of just the gratification, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a self-taught hunter. My family did not hunt. So
Yeah.
I learned everything on my own. And I think that was the best thing that ever happened to me because I didn't learn, I wasn't mentored by somebody in old school methods. I learned everything by failure and
Yeah.
passing through it.
And when I was a kid, I always thought that was just, I thought every hunter was this, the patience of Job. Like they were different than the rest of society. They were these magical people who questioned what was progress. Because going out and trying to shoot something versus farming, this is incredibly inefficient. Why would you want to do this? And that's where a lot of the discoveries from Hunt Quietly was so sort of jarring to me, is that there were so many people in the hunting world that were taking shortcuts just like everyone else in society.
Mhm.
That was a big bummer. I don't know if you guys had realizations like that or not, but
Yeah, well, I understand. That's an interesting perspective, actually. Why would you want to be a hunter when you could go buy something? You could go buy the same amount of food for a tenth of what you're spending on hunting.
yeah,
Yeah.
Be a farmer,
save your
right?
yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I just like if somebody wants to learn because time is so precious anymore. People are so damn busy looking at their cell phones, doing all the other crap that they do.
Yeah.
That time is precious, and if somebody if I can make somebody better at what they do, it changes. To me, when I became successful, I started having a better relationship with my wife during deer season, a better relationship with my kids because I was pretty confident I was going to get stuff, kill something or, get something done.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so I got along better with my wife when I first started hunting and when I first got married in 71 or so early in my hunting career, I used to purposely get into arguments with my wife so I'd have a reason. Well, screw you, I'm going home. I did it all the time. In fact, steelhead fishing is a great example. I wanted to go steelhead fishing this one weekend in April, and we didn't have a pot to piss in. I was working at Jay's, making, not a lot of money. My wife was a stay-at-home mom with 4 kids, and she actually broke my son Chris's piggy bank and got $38 out of it so that I could go fishing Saturday and Sunday.
Oh wow.
And I went fishing, and keep in mind, if I wasn't working, I was hunting or fishing with my kids. I was always doing stuff with my kids. Me and my wife really didn't have a relationship. We didn't go out to dinner. She just stayed at home and took care of kids all the time. So she didn't have a life. So I went fishing that weekend. And when I came home on Sunday afternoon, the only thing in the house was one bed and the refrigerator. The house was empty.
Wow.
She totally moved out, sold my gun.
Whoa.
Yeah. She had been having an affair. And she left with another guy.
Oh my God.
And to be
Whoa.
perfectly honest with you, I was pissed off for about a week. But I really, because I like to think I'm open-minded. I sat back and thought, I said, you know what? We got married young. She never got to do anything in life. All she ever did, she was 30 years old at this point. And all she ever did was stay home with kids. I hunted and fished when I wasn't working. I was having good times all the time. And she just got tired of it. And she wanted a life and she left. And I blamed myself on that as much as I did her.
Are you remarried?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All my shit's locked down.
Screwed to the floor. But
all the
I
kids
think,
are gone, so we don't have any problems anymore.
yeah.
We both have had jobs, a lot better off than I.
But that's really I think useful for a lot of, hunting is time intensive, and it's hard to, it's not like I'm going on a golf trip with my friends. You can easily bookmark the time. Hunting is too open ended, and it's and fishing and the outdoors in general, it makes it tough to balance family and life.
And it depends on
Yeah.
what your goals are. what
Yeah.
your think perspectives are.
For sure. Yeah.
Ben, you're a serious guy. You're a serious fisher.
Yeah.
You're a serious fly guy. I'm a serious deer hunter. What my goals are in deer hunting or with steelhead fishing are far different than a lot of other guys. So, you can't paint it with a single brush. There's
Yeah.
lots of different people and they have lots of different goals. And, there's guys that work in shithole factories in Detroit. They get 1 week off a year and they go up deer hunting. And if they want to shoot a freaking spike horn, screw all this APR crap. If they want to shoot a spike horn and that makes them happy, they should be able to. They buy it like anybody else. Why force what you want to get? You want to have all these trophy animals and put APR antler point restrictions on the entire state so that more big bucks, so that you can kill a big buck every year. Well, this guy, all he wants to do is go out and shoot a deer.
Yeah.
Maybe a 6-point wins the buck pool at the factory in Detroit.
Yeah.
Everybody's got different goals and everybody has different opportunities and more or less opportunities than others.
And I'll speak for myself. I'm certainly no perfect person, but Hunt Quietly, I think the primary person we're thinking of a lot of the time is that guy who's got 1 week off. How can he have the best time possible? And if some, Instagram bumfuck is costing him opportunity because the 1,000 acres that used to be public he could hunt or whatever, that door knocking doesn't exist anymore. How criminal is that? Just so some hunting celebrity can bag his 6th elk.
That's criminal, and the whole hunting mentality is criminal almost because some dude kills a 4-point and he's prouder than shit of it. It's the biggest buck he's ever killed, maybe, or 6-point, and he posts it on social media to get a little acknowledgement, and he gets beat to shit by all these guys that own these private managed properties and stuff. And what are you killing that little thing for?
Well, right there. It's like he just shouldn't put it on social media. Is my take on that.
Yeah, I agree, but a lot of those guys don't realize it until they do
it. Yeah.
And then they get beat to shit, and then they feel bad because they shot that deer.
That's
they were on cloud 9, and now
they're that's terrible. That's terrible.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what is going through your head when you're typing out some nasty comment about a deer somebody else shot. I mean, it's just so cold-blooded.
And that's a good use of your precious time on Earth.
Yeah.
You sit there and troll everybody. That's Sometimes I think they're just overweight people that are sitting there with nothing else to do in their soiled underwear, just to sit on a computer and eat the shit out of people.
Yeah, it's a tough. I'm sorry, out of my own curiosity, John, a little back to some of the scent stuff, but if I go take a leak in the woods when I'm hunting, I heard one person quoting someone else who is what this person was using as their credentials was this was one of the most cited deer biologists from a scholarship perspective. And what he was saying is that mammalian urine after about 15 minutes sort of converges to ammonia in the same type of sense. Have you heard anything like that? Or do you think that that's incorrect and that when you pee in the woods, you're leaving a scent that's going to be there for some period of time that can really be deleterious to your hunting?
I've written about that many, many times. And yes, if you do what is a human, I don't think it's within 15 minutes. Maybe he has some scientific proof of that.
Yeah.
I think within an hour, it turns into just an ammonia odor. But I have smelled fresh buck urine in a scrape immediately after they've urinated in it. Yeah. And I've also smelled my urine and other people's urine when it was fresh. And human urine and fresh deer urine definitely do not smell the same. So if I'm out making a mock scrape where I know nothing's going to go by this scrape, if I'm out there in the middle of the day making a mock scrape and I know nothing's going to go by until at least the afternoon, so maybe 4 or 5 hours, I don't have a big problem urinating in it for a year to have that ammonia odor by the time a deer passes by. But if I'm in a tree and I'm going to I am never going to piss out of my tree onto the ground because I feel like there's going to be at least a half hour to a 40-minute, if not an hour time frame where
Okay.
if a mature animal comes in, they can smell that is human urine and not deer urine. And I don't
Gotcha.
want there to be that time frame where that deer's going to spook from it. So I always
Okay.
beat them up.
Okay. So you're rolling the dice if within that next hour your target, the animal that you'd want to shoot comes by. Okay. Okay. That's helpful.
So I agree with him on that, and within a period of time it turns into a straight
Yeah.
mulch, but not immediate.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I have a friend. The first I picked up on this is I have a friend, Doug Duran, that he pees on scrapes on his farm all the time, and he claims that those deer work those scrapes that he pees on more. And now it's probably not because it's his pee. It's probably because
Yeah, after a
something
while
peed
it
on
turns
him.
into ammonia.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. The one other one I was wondering why doesn't ScentLock just have like a video where they've really thought through everything, where they can have a human being in a position and wait it out with cameras for the deer to walk by to sort of give incontrovertible proof to everyone to really, convince them that it works. Or maybe that video exists and I just haven't seen it.
That's an excellent question, Ben, and I have no idea. In my personal opinion,
Yeah.
while I am a huge believer, obviously, in ScentLock clothing,
Yeah.
it's not because it's ScentLock. It's
Yeah.
strictly because it's activated carbon.
Yeah.
If one other company made an activated carbon line clothing that was evenly distributed throughout the whole bodies of the suit, I would be pro them as well.
Yeah.
But as far as the video, I don't know. I also don't think that ScentLock has done a very good job at marketing how to properly care for, how to properly store, and how to properly use ScentLock in conjunction with other scent-free items. I
Yeah.
can't put anything out like that. Now,
Do you have content out on that?
do I? Oh, yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I've got it in, I've got an entire chapter on scent control in my new book.
Okay.
I've got 4 YouTube videos on scent control. It's in all my other books.
And in those videos, you go over how to care for your
Yes.
activated carbon clothing.
Yes, I've got videos on the whole BS on the soaps and shampoos. I've got BS on the urines. I've got YouTube videos on just about everything that has anything to do with boots, clothing, garments, waterproof, prepping locations, scouting public land, the fictitious BS with the TV guy. I've got videos on all that stuff.
ScentLock owes you about $2 million, I think.
ScentLock, I've been their biggest proponent, their biggest believer by far.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it just seems
it just cracks me up that they pay breweries whatever amount of money it is that they pay them for a sponsorship, and they hunt out of box blinds. Okay, I just don't get it. You don't even hunt out of a tree. At least I've had to hunt out of a tree a long time. So yeah, and you know what? I've actually told them that I don't care what you guys, because I do get my garments for free from them. That's the only thing I get.
Yeah.
But I said, I don't care if you guys take me off the pro staff or whatever. I will always be a proponent for ScentLock garments. Whether you guys hate on me, I don't care what you call me. I want to educate hunters how to be better hunters. And when you can get over a deer's nose, that's the biggest game changer there is, because that's their main defense. So I will always be a proponent for ScentLock because you guys own the patent on using activated carbon. Nobody else can use it. So obviously, you're the only company that I can really say functions as far as scent control, because you're the only one that gets to use activated carbon.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
I mean, why do you think every military on the face of the earth uses activated carbon in their chemical warfare?
Yeah. I mean, and
I didn't know they did.
They did.
So it'll protect you like from mustard gas and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. they use a different kind of carbon. They use carbon that have bigger pores in it because the molecules in chemical warfare are a lot larger because they're complex.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they have to use a different type of particles of activated carbon. But yeah, every military in the world since World War II has used activated carbon because activated carbon doesn't know which way to work from. As long as it's exposed to the environment, it's sucking in molecules from this side and this side, from both sides.
Okay.
Yeah. A doctor friend of mine talked to me about charcoal pills that if a kid swallows something poisonous or something like that, you swallow a charcoal pill and that helps to absorb whatever.
Every EMT truck, every hospital, every EMT truck has activated carbon pills on the truck for people that ingest poison.
Yeah. Interesting.
And NASA uses activated carbon in space suits. Every car on the road has activated carbon filtration filters in it someplace. They use it for water purification, purifying vodka and whiskeys, paint respirators, anything for it's the most absorbent substance known to man at this time, activated carbon.
Oh,
okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I remember you being a proponent of this in your book that I read 10 years ago.
You're a really weird thing.
Sure.
What's that?
If you take, and you can Google this, this is actually on Google. When I was a rep, if a hunting manufacturer came out with some technology and said, hey, this does this does this, even though I was repping that company, I never believed what they told me. I would go on the internet and Google the technology and see what other industries used it, because the hunting industry is minuscule compared to all the other worldwide industries. Okay.
Sure.
Typically, if there's a technology that functions for something, it's used in a lot of other industries in the world. So I can go Google something and find out if it's used by other worldwide industries or worldwide governmental bodies. The shit works because they don't just pick something out of the hat and say, hey, let's use this shit. So I Google everything. So even when manufacturers that I rep for would say this does this does that, I would Google it. And I would actually go on sales calls if I know this stuff didn't work the way the company said it did. Even though I was being paid to represent their products, I would tell the buyers, you know what? They say this does this, but it really doesn't. So if you've got this other brand here and you're selling it well, I'm here to try and sell you this, but I would recommend you keep what you've got. I was always honest with everybody.
That's great. That's great.
Did that ever have a couple awkward conversations with your sales manager and have to go somewhere else?
No, because they never found out.
Okay. Okay, there wasn't I
had buyers say, "Why are you telling me this?" I said, "Because I want your consumers to get the best that their money's going to buy, for their money." And in my opinion, the stuff I'm selling is not it.
Imagine if every rep was John, Matt.
Oh boy, yeah.
Boy, would we?
There'd be a lot less unnecessary purchasing going on. That is for sure.
There'd be a lot less influencers too. There wouldn't be the.
Oh my God! You want me to tell you a good influencer story?
Oh yeah.
I rep for Coleman for years. Coleman Camping.
Okay.
Everybody knows who Coleman is. The biggest camping company in the world for years and years and years.
I still use a circa 1975 Coleman lantern sometimes.
Okay, with the generators and white gas, yeah.
Yeah, and I have a Coleman stove that's about from that same time frame.
Well, Coleman has totally, in my opinion, I always have to say my opinion because I don't want to get sued. Coleman has totally went in a different direction from the hunting and fishing industry and the camping, the camping industry. So now they're going after, when I left, which was 2 years ago, they were going after the hikers and the backpackers, like you'd see in Europe up in the mountains. And in our last sales meeting, they had a woman that was the new sales manager, and she was a BLGT person. Okay. And every influencer they had on the sales meeting, and this was an 8-hour Zoom meeting. Every single influencer, and there was 8 of them, were hikers or backpackers. They didn't have one hunting or one fishing or one camping
Oh, interesting.
on anything, and their numbers have tanked. I think when we
Oh,
started
really?
ripping them, they were 1 point whatever billion dollars in gross sales, and they were down to like 400 million.
Oh,
my
no
gosh.
kidding. Well,
Oh, yeah.
they're stepping into a market that's already very competitive.
Yeah, very, very. Not only competitive, when you get into that upper end backpacking and hiking like they do out in Colorado and up in the mountains and stuff, those guys want very specific items. They want stuff that's going to be lightweight and small, part of stoves and stuff. And Coleman was trying to get into that. And Coleman is not that. The Coleman name is not for that.
Yeah.
Hunting and fishing and camping. And they were totally trying to change colors with this woke shit. Okay.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it was borderline woke crap.
Okay.
Awesome. Lots.
Yeah, that's a weird business move. Are they still
Very
represented in at your Walmart? Like
Yeah. They're still
okay.
in Walmart. Yeah, they
Okay.
still have tents and stuff in Walmart and Meijer, and
Yeah.
but they have created such a vacuum in so many places, and there's so many Stand Sport, Safe Sport, Tech Sport, Kelty. There's so many other manufacturers now that have taken over their sleeping bag business, their tent business, their stove, stuff like that at lower prices.
It's always a tough thing with parts of hunting and fishing where it was like, once I knew a brand got out of just being exclusive to the fly fishing crowd or the bow hunting crowd, something like that, I didn't want anything to do with it. And so they being the organization needs to realize that there's like a firm ceiling on where they can go before they start cannibalizing their best customers, which is tough because all the industries want to grow.
Yeah, you look at Sitka. Sitka was making waders that were $1,000 a pair.
Yeah.
And Jay's Sporting Goods, for instance, they ordered, I think, 24 pair of Sitka because they carried Sitka clothing, which is, in my opinion, 3 times more cost than it should be as far as the way they're made, because I know how the fabrics and stitching patterns work. Jay's ordered 24 pair of those waders, and they were literally $1,000 a pair of retail. And they sold them all in about a week and a half. I mean,
when was this?
Sitka waders.
No, when?
First year Sitka came out with waders. I'd say that was probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
7 or 8 years ago. And
I'd almost rather be wet than pay $1,000.
I would do. Hell, you could buy a pair of Allen waders for $100 for God's sakes, or neoprene with boot neoprenes.
Yeah.
Or frog togs.
Well, gents, I think I'm gonna move on and have some dinner. But I do want to say before we go, one thing I learned from you, John, from reading that book that never dawned on me to do, but now I do it all the time, is I learned to leave my bow in my tree. I learned that from you. I'm like, when I read that, I'm like, oh shit, duh.
Go back in the morning, leave it there. Once it gets rained on, rust on the screws here and there. Who's here? The only time you don't want to do that is if you're going to have a freezing rain at night.
Right.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, thanks a lot, John. This was
it was really, super fun. Yeah, great meeting you.
Yeah.
All right, you guys have a good night.
Yeah.
Okay, take care.
See ya.